Great. Well, hello everyone. Thank you for coming tonight, this afternoon, this morning, depending on where you are. Really appreciate you making some time to kind of listen today. So, my name is Scott Edinburgh, and for those of you I've not had the pleasure of meeting, I'm the founder of Personal MBA Coach. Today we will be talking about candidate success profiles, women in the M7. We'll have a lot of time for question and answer at the end, just with the technology platform. I'll kind of give the presentation, and feel free to type the questions in the chat box, and we'll be able to go over them at the end. I just can't see them while I'm presenting. So again, thanks everyone for coming. I'll give you a little bit of background about myself, then we'll kind of launch into the presentation. I'll have a very healthy time at the end for questions. I find questions are often really helpful. And feel free to ask about things not related to the presentation. We should probably have something around coronavirus, because I am doing other talks and presentations about that. These were scheduled ahead of time, but if you have questions around like what should you be doing, what should you not be doing, feel free to reach out. This is definitely some uncharted territory. So a little bit of background about myself. I went to MIT for undergrad, studied economics and business at Sloan. I was a teaching assistant for one of the MBA courses on negotiations as an undergrad. Then I worked at Deloitte in consulting, did strategy and operations, M&A work for a few years. And when I was 25, I started my MBA at Wharton. I picked Wharton because when I was in high school, I took a couple summers of economics classes at Wharton, really liked the curriculum. I wanted to go back for the MBA. My thought was to go into real estate development. So I went to Wharton to study. And when I was the first year, I founded Personal MBA Coach. My best friend was applying to schools. He worked with another firm, more of a cookie cutter process. Long story short, ended up, redoing a lot of the material. I got into Harvard, another Harvard, and then Wharton, and the company kind of expanded from there. So we can go over more of those details if anyone is interested in working with us. But top ranked consultant on a lot of different sites. I presented at the GMAT conference last summer, and a little bit more about what we do at Personal MBA Coach. And after the slide, then we'll go into the actual content for you. But we provide one-on-one MBA and graduate school admissions consulting and tutoring. So we have tutors on our team who teach the GMAT, GRE, and executive assessment. We do some in-person tutoring, although these days everything is remote. And we have tutors across all time zones. So a very customized, very personalized approach to tutoring. We have some of the best tutors in the industry, and extremely high success rates. And everything is all kind of catered to you. So in-house software to drive through the sessions works really well. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out. I'm also a former top 10 MBA admissions director on our team. I'm on the board of directors for the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants. So we do a lot of things with admissions directors each summer, and I can talk more about that later on if you're interested. We'll analyze profiles together and things like that. We have early planning packages, so in case any of you are not ready to apply to school yet, but you just kind of want to get things started, we can help you to think through how to perfect your profile between now and when you're ready to apply to school. And then we have a lot of former M7 interviewers on our team, and top 10, and also just former clients to network with at every top school. This is a picture of me at an MBA tour event in San Francisco. I travel and do a lot of these events. Most of them are canceled for the foreseeable future, so we'll see if they go virtual or not. But you might be able to see me, kind of virtually or in person soon. So cracking the M7. So these folks are all in M7 programs now. And I'm going to go through a lot of different profiles, and some of them will seem similar. Some of the things that we did with them will seem similar, and there's a reason for that. But this will give you a sense of what some people did to get into the M7, and they really used a compelling story to overcome some kind of a challenge. So we tried not to share too many I started 7 nonprofits, I have an 800 GMAT and a 4.0 GPA, and I've been promoted 5 times. We try not to use the most amazing stories here, nor the weakest stories. So these are some interesting stories and some profiles that had some challenges along the way. Success story 1. So here's a woman with a 3.6 GPA in undergrad from a major state college. So not a super highly ranked school. We're not talking about Princeton here. Um, not a middle of nowhere school that no one's heard of, but a state college. 670 GMAT. So, obviously it's out of 800, so 670 is not the best score in the world, but that's what we had. 5 years of experience in consulting, and we were a white female. So some challenges here: low quant score on the GMAT, low GMAT overall, but also low quant score. Common background in a consultant, and average GPA. So these are some of the challenges. So what did we do? Well, we kind of homed in on a niche focus in a common field. And without going into a lot of detail, keep some of this anonymous, we really talked about certain things that she wanted to do in the consulting industry that were different from, let's say, the average person. And we talked about what she's done so far in her career to, kind of layer up to make sure that she would be prepared to, accomplish some of these things. So we did talk about consulting, talked about a, common field, but then had a little bit of a niche focus, which was kind of interesting. We applied early. This is very, very important because timing sometimes is crucial in this process, and you'll see a little bit more about why at the end. And we did a lot to court the target school. Now, courting target schools, something that we talked about in other webinars with a GMAT Club. And as you go along, please feel free to like, dislike this, subscribe for GMAT Club updates. That would be super helpful, and subscribe to this channel. Courting the school is important because it shows the school that you're really interested in the program. Now, some schools are much more interested in this than others. There's certain programs that try to make it a lack of criteria, let's say. So they don't evaluate, school interaction or visiting at all. One question I have from folks is, how do I even court a school today? Right? I can't visit. Can I do an online webinar? Do they know that I'm even there? So don't worry about visiting. There will be no visits. I don't think there'll be any school visits at all before round one. If I'm wrong, maybe something later in the summer, but I doubt it. And so the ways that you can target, or rather court target schools, are one, you can just reach out to students, right? So a good old fashioned pick up a phone and call someone. You'll probably need to email someone first. A lot of these schools have names of students on their website that kind of self-select to be ready to talk to you. So these are good people to reach out to. For instance, Columbia, you can Google contact a student, Columbia Business School, contact a student at MIT Sloan. And they have people ready to chat with you. These are great resources. Also, be ready for virtual events, virtual webinars, virtual forums. These things have happened for years, and we'll be seeing a lot more of them. Just give schools some time. Someone asked me today, should I reach out and figure out what all the ways are that I can interact with the school? I said, no, right? These people are busy. I mean, this is a shock to a lot of people. Schools are not really planning for the virus, and so they're figuring out how to kind of redo their recruiting in this new world. So give them some time. But anyway, back to this applicant. We also added some personal connection to the goals to kind of make it a little bit more interesting. And the results were, we were accepted to Columbia Business School class of 2022. So the reason this is kind of a nice example is because if you go back to the beginning, 670 GMAT, it's pretty low, 70 points below the average for Columbia Business School. And as a consultant, this is one of our better success stories of the year. And by really applying early, by showing interest. So again, applying early was super, super crucial here because Columbia Business School is rolling. And the earlier you apply, the better. It just increases your chances of getting in. The deadline is in early October. They usually release essays in May. We'll see what happens this year. And so, as soon as you're ready, get it in there. So that's success story number one. Now, success story number two, here's an applicant, a white female from a top 30 school, undergrad, with 5 years of experience in healthcare, 3.9 GPA and a 730 GMAT. So this is one of the stronger profiles. Certainly, above average GPA, about average GMAT score. But the challenge here, or rather the objective, was to maximize scholarship dollars with this average GMAT score. Usually, if you get a score that is above average, you are more likely to get scholarships. But if you do want some money and you just have an average score, there's certainly a lot that you can do. So what do we do here? First, we double down on the healthcare story. There was a lot of initial discussion on whether we should be covering healthcare. How much do we cover? Is it differentiating? Is it actually interesting to the applicant? Is her story really stronger than others who have the same story? We decided to kind of double down here. Again, we included strong personal connection with goals, which is not required, but in this case, it ended up working out. And then we did something a bit different. We highlighted some unique extracurricular work and travel. And the reason for this was it allowed us to show that this person would be a really strong contributor to the campus. The reason I bring this up, reason I show a graduation picture, there probably won't be any graduations this year, is because schools really want someone who will be a strong contributor on campus. Now, if we go back to the scholarship request, this particular applicant really wanted a lot of scholarship dollars. And in order to get that, so they ended up getting in to Wharton and Booth and some other schools and got scholarships to both of them. And I don't think it was because of the GMAT score. I don't really think it was the work experience. What ended up allowing her to shine was her ability to make an impact on campus and the history of being successful, of having that impact. That made it easy for schools to say, okay, this is someone that we really want. And so we actually focused on that more than the work experience. In some essays that we could have written about work experience or we could have written about extracurriculars, we always chose extracurriculars. We always chose the leadership. And we really wanted to paint a picture of someone who could stand up on a stage in graduation in front of classmates. Success story number 3. So 4 years of experience with consulting and some medical background, some kind of medical field background. Now here we had a very high GPA from an Ivy League school, 3.8. So that was strong. GMAT score of 700. And so, what that said was it said, one, here's someone who can do the work, but just not able to do it on the test. And then we also took the test multiple times. So it wasn't like it was just one shot. We had multiple shots. 700 was the highest that we saw. So the big challenge is low GMAT score for the schools that she wanted to apply to. Another challenge was just a limited set of schools. Usually we see applicants applying to anywhere from 5 to 7 schools. We see sometimes 11, sometimes 1. But typically we fall in that 5 to 7 range. Once you're at 5 or 6 schools, you're really maximizing the chances of getting in. There's randomness. Today, Chicago Booth came out with their acceptances. Well, they're coming out tomorrow, but they called a lot of people today. So we saw a lot of great results. But what was funny, we saw some people getting into Booth that got rejected from Columbia and some other schools that are maybe lower ranked than Chicago Booth, but they got into Booth. And it doesn't mean anything about Booth versus other schools. There's just randomness in this process. So we really see that if you're applying to 5 or 6 schools, we're able to account for that randomness and have you maximize your successes. But this applicant only wanted to apply to 2 schools. She was only interested in 2. She wouldn't go if she didn't get in. And so it was a bit more of a narrow focus. So what did we do? Okay, first we really emphasized a interesting undergrad background in terms of the medical exposure and the major of focus. We talked about pretty distinct goals. And when we say distinct goals, we mean there is a distinct way of her accomplishing these goals. Now, you don't have to have distinct goals. To be clear, plenty of people get into school saying, I want to be a consultant at McKinsey. And that doesn't do anything for you. Nobody really cares, right? Anyone can write that. But people do get in by writing standard goals. What you have to do when you're thinking about goals is to consider what will actually sell to admissions teams. It's not so much the goal that matters. It's what is important as I'm thinking about the goal and you in this symbiotic relationship, this combination. That's what matters. So one person could write venture capital and get accepted, and the next 10 people could write it and get rejected because they think they'll never get a venture capital job right after school. So it seems like they don't have the right goals in mind. So it's really the goal and you together. Um, we talked a little bit about post consulting work, but it was, there was something very specific that she wanted to do, let's say, in the field. And then we figured out what were the motivators here, right? So it's one thing to have a goal, to have a great goal. Maybe we'll be increasing hospital beds in Africa. Today we should be increasing hospital beds everywhere, which is kind of scary. But here, really, it was the true motivators behind this goal. So why was this person interested in this goal? And that wasn't the goal, by the way. Why was the person interested in this goal? What what brought it about? Why are they doing consulting and then something in the medical field? Why are they then going, back and getting the MBA? So what is it about them that really makes them shine? And we put all these pieces together because again, we had a 700 GMAT. The results accepted to Harvard Business School and Wharton with a scholarship. So again, these were the only two schools that she applied to. Got into both of them. It's fantastic. One of our greatest success stories. Of last year, just because of the narrow focus in schools. We also spent a lot of time doing the essays. And when I say a lot of time, I don't mean a lot of revisions. At some point, if you revise an essay too much, you might start to make it worse. But we spent time, we reflected. So there was debate on like what we should cover. There were conversations with students. There's also a lot of detail in the Wharton application about Wharton. Now, I say Wharton because Harvard doesn't really care how many times you write about Harvard or how many thousands of classes you might tell them that you know. But, Wharton really wants to know that you're passionate about the school, and they want to know that you can channel that passion and show them exactly what you would do on campus. So we did that, and we did that with a lot of precision, and ended up being successful. And she'll be going to Harvard next year. Success story number 4. Here is an Indian female trader. So that's interesting. Interesting today because she's probably very busy. Um, the markets are going crazy. Hopefully, you have money in cash and not in the market. Um, but here's a trader. Now, traders historically do not make for the best business school applicants. And for any of you watching this later, this was one of the days where the stock market went down a lot and it's crashing, let's say. Now, it doesn't mean they don't do well in school. It just means that it's not the favorite pre-MBA path of admissions directors. Also, we have 3 years of experience, and these years of experience, by the way, are upon matriculation. So we applied with just about 2 years of experience and starting writing the essays with like 1.6 years of experience. 730 GMAT and went to an international undergrad school. So challenges here, right? We wanted scholarships. Again, the scholarship request. Our clients are getting a lot of scholarship dollars, and what we see, it's more money than is out there, just kind of anywhere else. We saw 25, 30% bump in the last year. A lot more people overall are getting scholarships. So she wanted to get a scholarship with average test scores, 730, and limited work experience. Again, only about 1.6 years as we're writing the essays. So we had to figure out how do we grow? What are we writing about without a whole lot of experience? So what did we do? Again, the personal experiences came in and they were tied to goals. But what we focused on was willingness to lead despite being underrepresented in her industry. So that was important as an Indian female, especially where she was working, she was underrepresented to many extents, let's say. But she really wanted to lead. So she did a lot of things to lead. We let it work. We started initiatives, working groups and things like that. We also led outside of work as well. And that was really important because, otherwise the average trader who's like underrepresented might not do a whole lot. And so they might not be able to shine from a leadership perspective. Because as you're trading, there's not a lot that you're actually doing from a leadership perspective in your day in and day out job. It's really a factor of how successful you are. So here we got into Chicago Booth and Michigan Ross with 160,000 in combined scholarships. So that was a lot of fun. And she picked a good time to go to school because with the recession coming, get out. If you haven't decided if you're applying, this is the time to apply. Applications, spike in recessions, and they do for a reason because it's a nice time to hide away. I was in business school in 2008. I timed it perfectly. Obviously, I didn't know it was going to happen, but timed it perfectly. 2008 was a Wharton. It was a recession. People were getting fired. People were losing their jobs. I got out just in time. Raises started to decline. It worked out really well. So if you're thinking about business school and you've been on the fence, now is a great time to be applying. Success story number 5. Here's a 710 GMAT with a 3.68 GPA. We have 4 years of experience in investment banking, and we went to a top 50 school. So challenge lower GMAT score, 710. Right, we said lower, not low, but lower. Another challenge was common banking, meaning a common background rather, meaning we're in investment banking. There are a lot of bankers that apply to school. And another one was average undergraduate experience. Now, average meaning 3.68 is the average score for average GPA for many top schools, even though it's great. But then we were in a top 50 school, so the school was not super highly ranked, was not super competitive. So these were the challenges. So what did we do? So here we really tied a childhood passion to this future goals. Now, this is not required. We have plenty of people that, again, they have standard goals. They don't tie anything to anything. They just say, this is what I want to do, and here's why I want to do it. There's obviously a reason why, but we're not going back and, talking about running, which we did in this circumstance. But for this applicant, it really worked out well because this passion allowed her to really explain why she had these goals and what she wanted to do in order to succeed with them. We also focused on a narrow industry. And this worked for her because it allowed her to talk about some of the things that she had done in the past and some of her interests. Now, to be clear, my recommendation is not go out and talk about a narrow industry of focus because you'll get into school. It's really situational. So for this person, that made sense. That's what was just good for her to do. But it's not necessarily the path for everyone. And we really showed personal conviction with these activities. So again, extracurriculars shined here. They were a big part of her story. Running, cooking, are those part of them? These are things that everyone does, or not everyone does, I guess. Some people don't run or cook. But let's say these are not the most unique activities out there. So we really had to figure out, what is it that she did? Who did she do it with? Who did she do it for? What was the main motivation behind that? We came up with this whole story, and it allowed us to really explain the reasons why she did some of these activities, and it ended out with a really really good result where got to Wharton with 50,000 scholarship, which for Wharton was pretty good, with a 710 GMAT, and Chicago Booth class of 2022. So again, going back here, 50,000 to Wharton with a 710 GMAT. This is happening, right? So for those of you that think, oh, I don't know that I can get in, I don't know that I can get scholarship, the reason for these profiles, it's more so than knowing all of the nuanced details for how we did the applications, because as you see, I'm only giving you the high level here. It's really to motivate you more than anything else, to think that you can do this and you can get in, and you can also get some scholarships as well. Now, don't bank on it, right? So these are 2 schools. We applied to more than 2 schools. We did not get in everywhere. We did not get scholarships everywhere. So this is not a expectation, rather it's a possibility. So a little bit about where we send folks to school. Our clients go to all the top schools. We couldn't fit all of the logos here. And last year, over 4.5, this is an outdated slide, 4.5 million scholarships. Today alone, we had applicants get a couple 100,000 in scholarship. So we're updating that number. It'll probably be around 5 million or so. We'll see what this year comes back with. But our clients are getting a lot of money at a lot of top schools. So how can we help you? We can help you with tutoring. again, private tutoring to help to improve the profile, brainstorming, right? What are you talking about? What are you all about? We'll do story development. This is a very high level overview. We keep more of the details for what we do for consultations if you're interested in working with us, so I don't bore everybody. But the way that we edit resumes and essays is pretty unique relative to what's out there in the space. And so I can tell you a little bit about what that process looks like, guidance for recommendations, and then mock interviews. We have a large team of former interviewers that conduct mock interviews. If you want to learn a little bit more about some things that you can do as you get started to think through your profile, whether it's prep or extracurricular strategy, developing a network, download our Kickstart guide. It's personalmbacoach.com/kickstart sign up. And if you jump on the website now and scroll to the bottom, you will see that guide. And it just gives you a lot of helpful, tips and tricks. It's a nice downloadable that we created. So with that, I will stop sharing and go to questions. And if you have any questions, feel free to post the questions in the Q&A field. I don't know how many of you are on live. I know a lot of this happens, later on where you watch the recorded version. But if anyone is on and has some questions, feel free to ask. I see one question. How often do you think schools give scholarships for women? Is there a specific strategy to target them? So answer the first one. Yeah, so how often? So schools give a lot of scholarships for women. There are a lot of opportunities. For one, there are scholarships that, Kartik, yes, good morning. Good morning to you as well. There are a lot of scholarships that are, given out just based on the strength of the application. So whether you're a man, woman, you can get scholarships, or you don't have to tell your gender at all these days. You can get scholarships. Now, there are specific scholarships for women, and they're a decent amount. There's not any percentage that I can give you because that varies by school, and it also varies by year. So some schools will give out scholarships to people that they think are strong and they want to attract to come to school, gender aside, and other schools will have scholarships for women. But a lot of our women got scholarships. So, we did quite well last year. Is there a specific strategy to target them? Not really. Not really. I mean, it's just to write a really good application. So our clients get money because they have great essays and they are showing schools that they can have an impact on campus. So whether that's having a good test score, whether that's interacting with students, showing extracurricular leadership to show schools that you can do a lot to give back to the community. I don't understand the last question. How do you have FaceTime with women and minor? I'm not sure I understand that question. So, oh, I see. It's scrolled on to the next one. So how do you have FaceTime with women and minority affinity groups before you apply? Yeah, so great question. The best thing to do is to just reach out to club websites now and ask people to have a chat. So if you go on, Wharton's, XYZ Club website now, you see the vice president. They have, their name and email address. A lot of people are not doing much these days, right? People are at home now. People are locked down or will be locked down soon. So it's definitely a good time to be reaching out and asking questions. So that's definitely a good way. Also, schools will have different virtual events and virtual webinars, alumni chats, virtual coffee chats, and you can certainly find people and reach out through that. So another question: what are the most common ways women shoot themselves in the foot while applying to schools? Oh, I love that question. Really, really good question. So let's see. So one way would be to just not have enough confidence. Sometimes I see that across genders, but I do see sometimes with women applicants who don't have enough confidence and maybe they apply to too many safety schools. And so the first thing that we do when we work with applicants is really give a very, very brutal gut check for what is realistic and what is not realistic. And one thing we pride ourselves on is like extreme honesty. So if I don't think you have a chance of getting into schools, believe me, I'll tell you. I'll tell you right away. But then sometimes we see folks and we say, I feel like you should reach higher. And like it's great to have these schools, but let's reach a little bit higher. So that's one way. Another way is in not trusting their employer. Now, I hope this doesn't come off the wrong way, but I see this a little bit more often in women than in men, where I hear, quote, I don't know if my boss will support me in writing a recommendation letter. And many times these are totally valid concerns. The boss would not support you. They don't want you to go to school. You're a great employee and they just don't want to lose you. But, sometimes I see applicants that are not aggressive enough and don't like go to bat for themselves. Don't, go to the boss. I used to say like, go out for a drink. Now it's going to be a phone call. Go to the boss and say, look, I've loved working for you. Here's what I've done. Here's how I think you would appreciate it. These are my plans. Thank you for guiding me through. Yeah, I love your support, and I love your support in this process. And just kind of going out and saying that. Those are two things. Let's see. Another way that applicants shoot themselves in the foot while applying to schools. Sometimes it's not applying to enough schools where I hear, well, things are going well here. I don't know that I want to make a change. Um, I'm gonna go for like a few schools and maybe not doing enough to really maximize the chances. And the reason that's kind of shooting yourself in the foot, it's not necessarily that you need X number of schools to get in, although sometimes you do, which is why we often see 5 or 6 schools. But if you're going back to the scholarship point, the more schools you apply to, more likely you are to get scholarships. It's a direct correlation, right? And it's like super, super strong. And it's not just because obviously you have more chances of getting scholarship if you apply to another school, but you can leverage one offer against another school and say, I got a lot of money from school X. What do you think school Y? And so that becomes pretty important in this process. The other way that becomes important is sometimes you just don't know where you'll be a good fit and where you won't be a good fit. And so if you're not really giving yourself enough chances, I had one applicant last year, applied to 3 schools, got into 2 of them, went to the welcome weekends, and just wasn't really happy. Ended up reapplying because they just didn't really like the schools. And they said, maybe if I applied to 5 or 6 schools, I might have had, a better sense of things. Especially in a year when you can't visit, we're going to see numbers rise quite a bit in terms of number of schools that people are applying to, because it's just too hard to do the research now. I mean, it's definitely possible to do it, but you really won't get a perfect sense of what's out there without going on campus, which is also totally fine, by the way, because plenty of people don't visit, and nowadays nobody's going to visit. Okay. What is the max age of applicant that you've worked with? Ooh, the max age. I would say for full-time programs, I have someone who's 42 right now. I feel like that's the oldest that we've worked with for full-time programs. So applicants with 15 years of experience. Um, yeah, well, 15 years degree. I think maybe you mean 15 years of experience. Yes, you would definitely be qualified if you have 15 years of experience. But one thing that I can say is you do want to look at the overall class profile, not to see like whether you can get in, but just to see, you know, how much you want to kind of spread your wings across. Meaning, we get people. So this person that we're working with, who's 42 years old, definitely has more than 15 years of experience, and they applied to 6 schools. I think it was like 3 full-time, 3 executive MBA programs. There was a bit of a hybrid, a bit of a mix, because we really wanted to make sure to maximize the chances of getting in. But we're getting interviews for full-time programs, and so it's certainly possible. I would say that it makes it hard. So you want to apply to a lot of schools. You want to really show the interest. You want to iron out your story, and think about maybe some executive MBAs as options. However, sometimes not a lot of people who are very experienced apply because not a lot get in. So it ends up being easier than some people think. So next, how do you feel about the epidemic? How do I feel about the epidemic and the anxiety that it's causing among applicants? It's a really good question, right? Look, this is causing anxiety everywhere. I'd be lying if I said I'm not anxious, right? A lot of people are anxious. I have family members that work at hospitals. I'm worried about catching this and what's going to happen. I have a compromised immune system. A lot of people are nervous for a lot of different reasons. So what I try to do is take a step back and think, okay, first of all, what is the anxiety doing for you, and how is it helping you? Next, anxiety might make things feel worse for you, but how about we look at some of the positives here, in the sense that, is this making you rethink things? Often when you see scary things out there, you're really forced to think deep and reflect and decide, is this really the right path for me? And that doesn't mean, oh, everyone should now think that they should be applying to business school. But you're on this webinar, so I'm presuming if you're watching this, that's already something that you're considering. So maybe is now the right time? We see some people that are going along their daily life and they think, yeah, eventually they'll get an MBA, they'll do this, they'll do that, and then they see some scary things and think, what am I actually waiting for? Right? Maybe this is the right time. I feel like the most common thing that people are anxious about is being able to get on campus to see the school and being able to actually go to classes at the school. And I have two different answers for that. So the first answer about getting on campus to see the school, you're not getting on campus, as I mentioned before, and be okay with that. If you're local, meaning say you're in the US and you're applying to schools in the US, think about applicants who are international. We have about half of our clients are outside of the US. We have a lot of people that just don't have the means to get to campus, whether there was coronavirus or not. And now you're just in their shoes. So it actually kind of levels the playing field a little bit in terms of the school research. In terms of whether classes will start and what that means, it depends where you are in this process, right? So if you are applying to schools this year, meaning you'll be submitting in 2020 to start in 2021, I hope things will settle down by then. That's a long way away. You're talking about a year and a half. If they don't, we'll have other problems, and that'll be more important than where you're studying. And for those of you who are going to be enrolling in the fall, I don't know what will happen. I mean, I hope things will settle out. People are thinking the worst will kind of fizzle away over the next couple months or so, and classes will start, school will start. What I'll say is, I was talking to one of my tutors, who's kind of 790 on the GMAT, is Wharton background and super bright. And we're talking about what's happening now on campus at Wharton. And what's interesting is, well, first of all, nothing's happening on campus, of course, but it's really teaching people about many different ways to interact. I think some of this remote stuff that's happening will prepare people for Skype interviews a little bit better. There are ways to see some silver linings here, and it'll also show people, the importance of trust, virtual trust. Okay, I am an Indian female working with India's largest public sector bank. Wanted to apply this year to top schools in round one, but now I'm scared because of uncertainty in the market. So it's a very valid concern. As we just talked about, a lot of people are kind of uncertain about what's happening out there. I would say if you're uncertain about what would happen in the market, it's a great time to apply to school. Our business is counter-cyclical in the sense that when a recession comes, more people apply to school. It's a inverse correlation. We just see that people want something better. They're uncertain, so they want to go to business school. They want to make themselves better. They want to be more marketable. Some people lose their jobs in recessions. Bonuses are not as high. Trying to move from one job to the next is a bit harder. So if you think about it, this was a pretty quick recession. The last webinar that I gave, which was, I think Suva can correct me, right? I feel like this was just a couple weeks ago. Like, I was not talking about this. So it happened quickly, and there's going to be a recovery. Now, nobody knows what the recovery period is, but if you're thinking about it, now it's March of 2020, right? March 18th, 2020, at least when I'm recording this. You'll be submitting applications probably in September of 2020 or January of 2021. You'll start in September of 2021. You'll graduate if you do a 2-year program. You'll graduate in May or June of 2023. For those of you who are in school now, don't panic. There are ways around it. I can talk to you offline. But if you are applying now, you'll graduate in 2023. By then, things will probably be improving. At least that's the hope. That's over 3 years from now. So I actually think it's literally the best time to be applying to school, probably in like a 15 to 18-year span. And the last time we saw this was when I was in school in 2008. It was also a great time. So I wouldn't be concerned at all. If I'm not addressing your question, please retype the question, and I'd be more than happy to address it. If I skipped over another concern that you had, I'd love to address it. So I'm gonna, answer a question that I got from someone earlier today who's not able to make it to the webinar. And this was, how do I really show my boss that I'm a leader to the point that they can write about leadership stuff in the application? And I thought that was an interesting question, right? So the first thing is, do more work, take on more responsibility, and don't ask for it. Sometimes people will ask their boss, okay, boss, can I do more modeling, or can I lead this new project, or can I do this or that? Maybe today they're distracted, right? There's a lot going on. I don't know what industry everyone is in, but a lot of industries are hurting now. Do something on your own. Do something different. Step outside the box to, be a leader, and whether it's like new recruiting or whatever it might be. If you do some things on your own and then you go back later on and you say, hey, I'm interested in some support. These are some bullet points for things that I thought about as I was considering what I might, cover if I were in your. So that's one thing. Another question I got from someone was, how big of a difference is there between round 1 and round 2? Now, if I know the answer perfectly, then to some extent I'll be investing in the market, and I probably won't be doing this anymore. But jokes aside, typically round 1 is a better time to apply than round 2. I think it'll be that much better this year because it's already mid-March, maybe towards the end of March. If there are people that were not planning on applying to school, maybe they start thinking about it. They talk to friends. They watch this video. They look at some other things. April rolls around. They're like, all right, let me study for the GMAT or GRE or the executive assessment. So they're studying in April. They're studying in May. They're still studying in June. Things get busy at work. Maybe they take the test in the summer. Maybe they don't. These people might be applying round 1, but they might miss it. And so they might be applying in round 2. So usually we see round 1 is better because, schools haven't accepted anyone. So it's a clean slate. Why not get in there before other people have kind of gotten in there? I think the advantage will be exacerbated by the fact that more people will be applying in round 2. And, the economy might also not be improving. So there are folks out there that think, oh, the stock market's down, it'll bounce back, right? Some people say it's going to, quote, bounce back. I don't believe that. Not that I'm an advisor, so don't invest based on that. But I don't believe it'll bounce back right away. I think it'll be a longer period. And so as things, get extended, as hourly workers start to not make money and people aren't investing in X and Y, there will be many, many ripples into the economy. And so we'll see it in the months to come. Therefore, by the time you see round two, I think it'll be a little bit harder. So round one is far and away my favorite approach. Now that said, there are different trade-offs. So you might think, okay, Scott, great advice. I've heard that before, but what about my situation, right? What if I have a 720 GMAT and I just can't get it up? I want a 750. I feel like I can get there in round two, but you told me to apply in round one. Now I'm stressed. Wait until round two, because my assessments are assuming all things are equal, or maybe GMAT score is like 10 points high or something like that. If you can get 30 points on a GMAT, wait for round two to get that, because even though round one is going to be better, round two will still be a fine round, and you want to be competitive when you're applying. Any other questions from anyone today? So here's a question coming through another channel. So question on goals, right? And how specific do they need to be, especially if I'm making a transition in my career and I honestly don't really know what it is that I want to do? Great question. So first of all, if you don't know what you want to do, run away and don't apply. No, in all seriousness, it's a bad joke. Oh, look, a lot of people don't know what they want to do. Okay, you're going to school. Especially if you're leaving because the economy sucks, right? You just might not know. You just think that you want to get out. So it's fine if you don't know what you want to do. That's not a problem at all. What you want to think about is, what is this talking point, right? You want to have, you're not rambling for an hour like I am. You have 30 seconds, 60 seconds to talk about goals. If you are in an info session with an admissions director and they say, oh, tell me about, yeah, what do you think you want to do after school? Right? You can't talk for 4 minutes. They'll be bored, look at their watch, and look around and talk to the next person. Or if you're in an interview and they say, so I see that you wrote about, consumer packaged goods. Tell me a little bit about your post MBA goal. Right? You have a minute to talk, maybe a minute and a half. You really want to have this tight soundbite down. The other thing that you want is you want to be specific about what you're doing relative to what someone else might be doing in the same goal. So if you're talking about management consulting, let's say, right? A lot of people are going into consulting or want to go into consulting. Let's talk about what you'll be doing within consulting that might be somewhat different from other people, or perhaps might leverage some other skill sets that you have from your background, right? So thinking about that is important. You don't just want to say, I want to be a consultant, and long term, I want to run my own tech business. Okay, well, what does that mean? What kind of tech business? What kind of work do you want to do in consulting? So you want to go into a little bit of detail on the goals, but not super detailed, such that you're limiting yourself to just like 2 or 3 jobs. Next question: how does a business school look at sabbatical of a few years that's taken by female for childcare? Yeah, so that is totally reasonable. We have applicants that take sabbaticals to take care of their kids. We have a 6-month-old daughter at home, and it's hard. It's hard work. I'm watching her now, during half the day. We don't have childcare right now, given a lot of things going on. And that'll settle on once like places are open and people are able to actually interact with one another. But it's hard. And then my wife takes the other time. So having time to care for a kid is totally reasonable. Now, to answer your question more specifically, right? How do schools look at that? Schools look at it like there's just a pause, right? So it doesn't work against you. It doesn't work for you necessarily. It's just kind of like, these years did not happen in your professional career. So, if you had 4 years of experience and then you had 3 years off and you go back to work for a year and then you apply, it's like you have 5 years of experience, which is the average. The one thing to consider is if you are not working right now. If you're not working right now, we should talk because we really want to think about how to position you. We had a client ended up doing quite well who was out of the workforce. You know, had children, was out of the workforce for a few years, like you're mentioning, and we're applying to schools now. We doing quite well in the process, but we focused on a lot of other things that she was doing. So extracurricular leadership, community engagement, citizenship, stuff like that. And then we also had, a pretty detailed plan for what she wanted to do. Now, I gave her the feedback that I gave you, which is like, or that I'm giving you now, I guess, which is, like, let's get some work experience now so that we're not unemployed when we apply. And she said, basically, no, we're going to apply anyway because we want the MBA to help get work experience. So that's what we did. And it ended up, working out quite well. So yeah, it's not really factored in. It's just, it's just kind of years that are not part of your professional path. Any other last questions today? And thanks so much for all the good questions. I really appreciate it. If you have any other questions, feel free to send me an email, Scott, SCOTT, @personalmbacoach.com. The website is www.personalmbacoach.com. We're on GMAT Club. I think you can tweet us. My social media person manages that. But feel free to reach out with any thoughts or questions that you might have, and would love to answer them. And if you are interested in working with us, check out our packages and feel free to send a note. Oh, I see one other question. How about an overseas college program, 1 year of research? Will that be evaluated in terms of education? Overseas college program, 1 year research. I think you mean that you studied abroad overseas and you spent a year doing research. How is that evaluated? If I'm interpreting your question correctly, then international experience, kind of studying abroad, is definitely a positive, right? Schools want to see people who are well-rounded, who can interact with other cultures, who have experience, seeing how things work. If you have some research experience, I think research is great. I'd be curious to see what you're researching and how it ties into your overall goals. So, I think this could be a net positive to your profile. I think it could definitely be a net positive. And especially if you're doing, if you've been like working a lot, yeah, you're most welcome. Thanks for the questions. Especially if you've been working a lot in your field. I know you mentioned that you had 15 years of experience. So if you're working for a while, and then before that, you did some really specific research, you're just kind of like solidifying yourself as an expert in the space. And this, year abroad and research maybe helped you to start that track. So I think that sounds like a positive. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Really appreciate the time. Feel free to like the video and subscribe to the GMAT Club channel. Sign up on our website for our newsletter. We send out a weekly newsletter with some tips and tricks. We sent out one on Sunday about coronavirus and what to do, what not to do. And thank you, Shivik and GMAT Club, for hosting this. Really appreciate it, everyone. And best of luck. Look forward to seeing you all soon.